Congratulations on a decade. A decade!
G'day everyone and welcome to the Trekzone Spotlight. Today's guest is a regular to Trekzone.org and many other podcasts around the world. He's an authority on Star Trek and he is joining me now fresh from CondorCon in San Diego is Larry Nemecek. Larry, you've had a chance to watch a couple of minutes of Star Trek Horizon. What are you thinking so far?
Well, it's great. It shows, I think that's the epitome of fan filming, and I should say, and boy, are my arms tired. Horizon is on my list of things to do, but I just had like 3 weeks worth of stuff stacked up here. But I talked to Tommy a little bit early on, I think on one of the other podcasts. We talked sideways, laterally. And I've seen, nothing but good things going by, and good on him. He had for Kickstarters of what, 50,000, I think, and got there, and has given people teases along the way, and good on him for jumping into an era that hasn't had a lot of attention put into it. The Archer era, the founding of the Federation, Romulan Wars era. So, but it looks great.
Unfortunately, the heavens have just opened up, as you probably are hearing. But Larry, Tommy, as you say, Tommy has done an absolutely fantastic job with this production in an era, again, as you said, that hasn't really received a lot of fan film attention. No
one's really touched the Archer era, quote unquote. The Romulan Wars, the founding of the Federation era, and it's great. And now that we've got visual cues, uniforms, and the production design, what the culture looks like at that time, it's like, why not? And there's so many gaps to fill in. Who knows, unless Brian and Nick Meyer and all of them pull a fasty on us here and we start having flashbacks, who knows if we'll ever get any canon authoritative look at that era. So yeah, good on him for going back there. And Doug Drexler had that great line that there are tons of new Enterprise fans now who don't even know they're supposed to hate the show.
And that leads to my other question, Larry, about Nicholas Meyer. The news over the weekend was that he's joined as a producer and writer, I believe. What are your feelings now towards this new Star Trek TV series?
Well, I fell off my chair. I was daring to hope that somebody like Brian Fuller would get the keys to be the showrunner. I mean, I could be wrong, but I get the feeling that that Alex Kurtzman was somebody when they needed to announce the series, they knew was a stable, ongoing, current producer, but somebody who was not tied up in other deals to other studios. I think there were a lot of people who have worked on the franchise before that would like to have been involved with the series, but they were already by contract hooked up to another network or another studio or what have you. And I knew Brian wasn't, and he's been quite vocal in public about wanting to pitch a show in over the last few years, whatever the prevailing creative or political winds were with Star Trek, if there are any anymore. So that was the thing I dared to hope, because he's about the highest ranking person with a lot of gravitas who had been really grounded in Trek, and I knew who had been an old fan, and there's some others too. But that was the thing, and I don't think I tried to talk about that, and I don't think a lot of fans got it, that, people like Ron Moore and Ira Behr were caught up in contracts and they couldn't get out. David Goodman is another one who's tied up in a contract and couldn't get out even if he wanted to, and others.
Having said that too, having said that people like Ira and Dave are all tied up in contracts, that doesn't necessarily mean that they can't work on this new Trek series in the future. If we have an absolutely optimistic view and say that this show's going to run for 7 seasons, just like Next Gen, DS9 and Voyager, if their shows end, they might be able to come aboard.
Well, that's true. That's true. And the 7 seasons, yeah. But I mean, the thing about 7 seasons was that's a formula. 7 seasons, Next Generation started. 7 seasons, $1.5 million an episode, 26 shows a year, hours a year. That was a formula that the bean counters at Paramount came up with in 1986 for the syndication market from the stations they were able to put together. This is a whole different, this is streaming, whole different landscape. I mean, most of the streaming series have a much shorter regular seasons have already on a full-blown network show in the States are already back to like 2022 shows. No one does 26 show seasons anymore, episode seasons anymore. And the premium like HBO and Showtime, those networks, and now the streaming services tend to go with 10 shows, 12 shows, which is great for, they're not burning out the actors or the writers especially, or the crew. And that's probably what this is going to be, I would think. But again, they haven't said. They haven't given us a number yet. And I'm still waiting to see the number of episodes and where they're going to shoot. They're going to shoot it in LA or Vancouver or what?
Well, Nick has said he conducted an interview a couple of days ago, and he said that the show is going to go in a different direction. How do you interpret that comment?
I know. And then I saw like the internet melt down. A different direction? What does that mean? I go, it's what a guy who can't talk about a show says. No, we're going to go in the same old stale direction. Don't look for anything new. I mean, what? That's what he's supposed to say? But it's enigmatic. You don't know if he's talking about timeline, universe, or what era, or if it's going to be a series of standalone one-offs that don't even relate to each other. If it'll be a different if it'd be like an anthology Star Trek, or if it'll be a Klingon show or whatever. We don't know what that means. But I've enjoyed watching people just, imagine the worst.
Well, and the other thing too that you could interpret, what Star Trek is out there now, and the only Star Trek that is out now is the film franchise in the JJ verse. So does Nick's comment of it going in a different direction mean that what you know as Star Trek now is not what the TV series is going to be? And that's my hope. My hope is that we're in the Prime universe at some time with those ideals that Jean set forth with the very beginning of Next Gen, and maybe a bit of Ira's influence from DS9 and darker and grittier and extended plot lines and all that sort of stuff. That's my hope.
But I will point out that this is CBS, who has a vested interest in keeping the value of all the, it's purely commercial, much less emotional and fan-involved attachment to all or part of 730 something hours of prime universe content. I hate using that word content because it always sounds like we're making dog food or something. I just like in cans. Just open up some more content and throw it on the stove.
Well, and I wonder too whether the JJ verse is a Paramount property now. They're using the characters and the settings and the places of the Star Trek franchise, but they've created their own universe. So I'm wondering, and again, we are fans, and we're delving so much into this, but I would love it if that's Paramount's universe, and CBS isn't allowed to go to Paramount's universe. They have to do their own thing, and their own thing, as you said, is 730 hours of content.
If the polite words become, if they think of it corporately as Paramount's universe and CBS's universe, then, and we just talk about Prime and the alternate universe, then that's the difference or whatever. But that could very well be. But I just laugh. I just go, well, what is the alternate universe? What is the Paramount JJ universe? It's 90% the CBS universe it's totally the same until it's not. Vulcans have pointed ears. Klingons are warriors. Yeah. It's called warp drive. They're called phasers. And we've got all this. There's all this news in the uproar about the Axanar fan film and the CBS lawsuit there, and getting into IP, and one of the issues being the IP, being the intellectual property and all that, and defending it or staking it out or whatever that's going to look like coming up. It's funny to be talking that way about the two owned versions of the property. And if that really does become a split, or if the JJ movies just become 3 or 4 2-hour movies that kind of were this stub that existed for a while until everybody, the creative forces behind that all kind of lost interest, or went on to other things. I don't know. I don't know if that whole movie actor cast really wants to come back and do those characters every 2 or 3 years ad infinitum. People tend to work on 3 movie deals, 4 movie deals. because they don't want to get too bound up too far down the road. No one knows what, never say never, or never say never again, or whatever. But it's just hard to think about them play, because like you think of like the Bond movies. No James Bond ever goes beyond, 4 or 5 movies. So
yeah, exactly right. Well, Larry, it's going to be absolutely fantastic. We have another 9 months of speculation before the series comes out.
Oh God, yeah.
So we'll undoubtedly be chatting again throughout the year, and as more tidbits of news come out. So really looking forward to it, Larry. Thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you. I know that we're going to be talking on this on my Trekland at my blog and at LarryNemecek.com, and Portal 47 that we just started for deep diving background. We look backwards and we look forwards too, and I'm looking forward to all of this. I hope we don't get too anal about the drip, drip, drip of crazy rumor mongering. I hate that part about. That's the one thing the internet has ramped up. But I look forward to really having some awesome things to talk about. I'm just so much more charged up about talking about a series than a movie, just because a movie is a one-off and a series is you actually get, Star Trek evolving. So yeah, it's going to be an amazing few months coming up.